Hi, everybody. I'm just going to take this opportunity to address the questions that we didn't get to in last week's webinar. And looks like a pretty challenging set of questions here. So thanks, everybody. This first one's particularly interesting. If I were raising a stuttering child, how would I handle that? I'm going to assume this is referring to full-fledged stuttering, not an at-risk child. I have had that situation, but we're talking about, say, at least a school-age child who's, the stuttering has moved in for good. Probably would have tried to get him into therapy very early with a board certified specialist. I mean, you can find them online. There's not a lot of us. But the reason I say that is because the parent-child relationship could be a hindrance in something like this. That is, he might need the information from a different voice. I'm thinking back to when I coached my son's Little League team. For a short period of time, he was moving his back foot in the batter's box. And I told him to stop it, and he continued to move his back foot. So I said to one of the other coaches, "Tell Blaine to stop moving his back foot." He said, "Blaine, stop moving your back foot." Okay. And he didn't move his back foot anymore. I said, "Thank you," to the other coach. The coach said, "Oh, that's fine. My kid never listens to me either." Yeah, I think I know what I would want him to get. I would search for that. Something to focus on speech-related attitudes, something to teach him to stutter openly because he has good things to say. What was my turning point to acceptance? I didn't really have a turning point until I was in my 20s. Until that time, I was able to hide the stuttering pretty successfully. If you talk to people I went to college with, you'd probably hear a lot of them say, he doesn't stutter. He didn't stutter at all in those years. Because I was employing a lot of secondary behaviors. When I hit my 20s, remember I said those behaviors are only temporary, and things started to fall apart. So this annoyed me to the point where I couldn't let stuttering win anymore. I couldn't ask for things I wanted because I might stutter. I couldn't order the food I wanted to eat because I might stutter. I couldn't introduce myself because I might stutter. That is, the stuttering kept winning. So I said, all right, even if I stutter, I'm going to ask for ketchup. Okay, I'm going to ask for what I want to eat. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to put myself in situations that are difficult for me. Even if I stutter, I'm winning doing that. I'm not letting the stuttering win. I'm not letting the stuttering control my life, was, I guess, the mindset that I was in. And that had a huge positive effect moving forward. I do remember one morning, I woke up before the alarm and I was laying in bed and I was thinking, okay, what do I have to go to work. There's going to be a meeting first thing. Maybe I need to leave a little earlier because the car needs gas, normal kinds of stuff. And it suddenly struck me that I didn't wake up thinking about stuttering. I wasn't thinking about where do I have to talk today? What am I going to have to say? Who's going to hear me? And I thought, oh, you know what? Maybe I've reached some measure of acceptance here. That was a significant enough event for me that I actually used it in the stuttering workbook oh, you can actually see over, we got the mirror image thing again. So let me see right there, stuttering power over it. I actually incorporated that into the workbook. When I was in my 20s and had to make a change, I started to think about a lot of the things I had learned in therapy, you know, 5 to 10 years earlier. Not, well, it wouldn't be 5, it'd be of 10 or more years earlier, and started to put those things to use. I mentioned that because I thought that was a pretty unique story, but it's actually not. If you Google, I mean, if you're interested in this area, Google voices stuttering. The first thing that's going to come up is a site from Minnesota State, and it's a series of short speeches people have made about their own stuttering, and they're quite interesting. The panel that I was on, there were several variations of that story. Okay, I wasn't a good patient when I was in speech therapy, but then later on, when I really needed that information, I thought back on it and I used it. So SLPs, if your clients don't seem to be listening to you, take heart. They might actually put that information to use later on. What's next? Oh, somebody who was talking to a class about stuttering and didn't stutter. This is another one of those things that's not as unusual as you might think. We hear variations of this a fair amount. In fact, in the last support group meeting, this very topic came up, and it's come up before. There seems to be, and again, you know, it's not universal like everything, but for a lot of people who stutter, there seems to be this this thing that goes on where when you give yourself permission to stutter, it's okay if I stutter here, speech becomes easier. I mean, that's an idea that we try to base therapy on. Okay, if you can get, you know, if you can improve your attitude to the point where, you know, the whole stuttering doesn't start to go away until you don't care about whether it's going to go away. You know, basically that same idea going on here. Much easier said than done, of course. But yeah, that it is an interesting phenomenon. I do agree. The next question comes from a 2015 graduate of the program. Now I'm curious who that is. Anyway, how to help a stuttering child accept their stuttering when the parent, who also stutters, does not. Very challenging situation. A lot of research into therapy brings up the point that when parents are on board, when they're involved, therapy works better. But as the question suggests, that's not always possible. I mentioned last week a friend of mine who had a group of stuttering school-aged kids, and they would walk around the school and talk to people. And he called it the Stuttering is Cool group. The way that group came about was basically this idea. For various reasons, some better than others, the parents of those children were not available to work with him. So he had just the kids. He didn't have that parent involvement. So he had to think of ways to improve these kids' attitude about stuttering, to desensitize them to stuttering. And that's what he came up with, and it was very effective. So, there's an idea right there for, for that particular question. Okay, a note that my speech was slow enough that the listener's brain could keep up. Thanks. Actually, thanks for mentioning that. That is something I try to watch out for. And essentially, I'm teaching to my own brain. I do see the students. That is, I do teach classes for the students in our program their very first semester there. So I see their early presentations before they get pretty good at it. I'm seeing the earlier stages. Sometimes they get up in front of the class, they're very nervous, and as a result, start to talk real fast. And sometimes it's to the point where I have to say, well, hang on. Okay, you're talking faster than I can think. You're talking faster than I can hear. Okay, then I can process. Let's take it down a notch or two. Having been on the other side of that several times, I do try to watch that. So I'm glad it worked for at least that particular listener. Two people one making the point, one asking a question about stuttering being genetic. There's a lot of evidence for stuttering being a genetic disorder. Stuttering tends to run in families. There have been some gene marking studies out of the NIH that seem to indicate that combinations of genes are associated with stuttering, sort of. What they did was look at families with a high incidence of stuttering, and they were able to mark some genes. It wasn't the same genes or set of genes across families, so it raised as many questions as it answered. But nevertheless, throw that in the evidence pile. There's been structural equation modeling indicating that wide variance there, but some indicating 70–80% of stuttering is genetic. Twin studies, just a lot out there. Let me just mention sometimes, because sometimes the context for this question is cause of stuttering. And I did mention last time that the root cause of stuttering is neurological. So just let me mention, so there's no confusion here. It can be both genetic and neurological. Okay, something is passed from generation to generation. There seems to be a susceptibility to stuttering. How that's manifested is in some sort of microscopic neurological difference. How stuttering affects singing. Singing is a fluency enhancing condition. That's a term out of the research literature, out of textbooks, indicating, pretty much like the term sounds. There are certain conditions that you can put stuttering individuals under and their fluency improves. Singing is a very strong one. There's whispering, talking to animals, talking to infants, talking under masking noise. just certain conditions where quite often you see stuttering completely disappear. And in fact, singing in some really old research seemed to make stuttering disappear for about 96% of the subjects that they looked at. Why that works, like most fluency enhancing conditions, is not definitive. It could be that singing is an easier task. Well, it is an easier task, but the reason could be because singing is an easier task. The voicing is constant. You don't turn it on and off like you do with speech. Singing has a certain rhythmic quality to it. It's just not as complex as conversational speech. Also, if you think in terms of left brain, right brain, singing is a right brain function. Okay, so maybe it's just simply using different brain pathways, somehow evading that that little glitch, that whatever's going on in the brain. Final question: electrical stimulation. Any place in treatment? I wouldn't say any place in treatment at this point in time, but there is some promising preliminary research in this area. Like many things that came before it, Botox injections, pharmaceutical agents, electronic devices, seems to help some people who stutter, and we don't really know why. Nevertheless, it's a promising area of research, and hopefully one that will help a lot more people in the future. All right, thanks everybody for the great questions. And if you have additional questions, feel free to reach out for me. This will end the research and action presentation.